Yo guys, what is up and welcome back for yet another episode of the Off Grid podcast. Now this episode is with Mr. Ian Finch, who is an adventure photographer and founder and outdoor guide for Walk Wild and a former Royal Marine Commando. Now in this conversation we talk about what the need for adventure actually is, how the Royal Marines changes you as a person, and what remote tribes can teach us about culture, discovering our own spirituality, and what nature can teach us if we really pay attention to it, and just leave an urban area within 10, 15, half an hour, and just see what amazing nature is on our doorstep. Hope you guys absolutely love this conversation, and let's get into it. On with the podcast. First of all, Ian, welcome to the Off Grid podcast.
Yeah,
Pleasure
thank
to have
you.
you
Good
here.
to be here.
Yeah, it's before coming here, I was obviously preparing for the podcast, and I've got to admit I was actually intimidated preparing for this because you've done so much in your life. There's like a wide breadth of experiences and different expeditions and different skills that you've learned in your life. So I was always asking myself, where do I start? But one thing that I actually felt like I could relate to you and where I wanted to kick it off is just this need for adventure, this want and love of nature and wanting to get out there in the world. So why is it that you think you have this need for adventure within you?
It's a good question to start off with. The need for adventure, I guess fundamentally it's a need to be outside. Adventure is like the vehicle. That's the way I see it. The adventure, be it an expedition, a big canoe trip, or climbing mountains or anything like that. That's the vehicle for me to enjoy and experience the outdoors. For me, I think it's just a love of nature, a love of trees, forests, mountains, hills, and rivers, and all things like that. It's a grounding experience for me. And then if you go on sort of some of the bigger expeditions where you're pushing your body, you're pushing your mind, you're meeting people on these trips that you may not ever really truly meet again. These are kind of like life-changing experiences, and these are the kind of experiences where I just love. It's just part of the fabric of who I am, and I think there's just so much to be learned from being out in nature, being in the outdoors, slowing down, and I think it's a very grounding and sort of like healing experience. And I think I'm always looking for that. And you could really put that all under the umbrella of storytelling, which is really truly what I am at heart, is a storyteller. And it's I'm looking for stories to tell when I go into nature, or I go on expeditions. I'm looking for stories to tell, and it's really the junction of people and nature and landscape, that triangle of story, which is what I'm really looking to sort of on pretty much every trip I go on.
Okay, so it's something that you're seeking.
Yeah.
And something you've spoken about yourself is what you seek is what you lack. That there is this kind of sense of void. You use the word void within yourself that you're looking for. How would you describe that void of lacking adventure in yourself? What is it that you're really seeking?
Ooh. I think it's connection. I think that's probably the best word and it's connecting to the landscape and connecting to people. And I'm always absolutely fascinated by people's connection to rivers and forests, and that kind of like maybe the spiritual connection or that grounding connection. And I think whenever you're interested in something and going after something, there is that sort of void that you're looking to fill. So I would say probably connection for me is the sort of the what I'm going after, really. And understanding things a bit better, understanding the mechanics of nature and how people interact with nature. There
seems to be like a almost innate curiosity within you, this spirit that's just wanting to discover, adventure, explore and learn. And be educated. It seems like a lovely sort of open outlook to life, that you're not yet this kind of finished article. You're here
No.
to discover both the world and perhaps on that journey yourself. Um, what is that like to be that sort of spirit, to be that character? What's it like to be you?
I think it can. I've learned to mellow out over the last few years. Sort of there was always this innate drive within me to not necessarily push boundaries, but to push my body and push my mind. And being in the Royal Marines and everything, that was part of that understanding of how far I could go physically towards the edge. And then that kind of changed and manifested into looking into nature and looking into sort of stories and people. It can be tiring at times. The creative mind it's a gift and a curse at the same time. It's a real gift to be creative and have the drive to go and do those things. But at the same time, I'm always conscious of the fact that my mindset I'm very privileged to have that mindset. That's not a mindset that everybody has. So I'm very humble and very sort of conscious of that, to have that sort of, I would say, not ability, but have that opportunity to be able to go into the world and go into do big adventures or just live that way. It's a privilege, and I'm sort of thankful for it. But yeah, it's nowadays it's changed. It's not always about highest, furthest, fastest, world first, or anything like that, which has never really been truly my goal. Now it's about authenticity, story, and sort of hoping that those stories impact people and change people's ways of thinking or ways of seeing the world. So yeah, it can be tiring, but it's rewarding at the same time.
And in what ways is that creative mindset a curse?
It's because your mind's always going at 100 miles an hour. And I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes with ideas for trips or for writing, like for stories or expeditions. This is where it's, it can be quite hard sometimes. But your mind is always firing. And I'm always trying to look for the opportunities in things, like creatively. And I'm because of the whole kind of like storytelling connection, whenever I lead walks or lead adventures for people and bring back some of the imagery and some of the experiences from these weekends, I'm creating stories out of those to share online and share on Instagram or and stuff. So it's always firing at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And it sounds like it's almost separate to you, like something that you need to maybe tame or control. Does that feel the case?
Yeah, in some cases, but now I definitely nowadays I'm a little bit more sort of forgiving towards myself, towards letting things just come and go and not trying to push too hard, letting things be. So yeah, I'm certainly a lot more forgiving with it now, and I don't think there's any desire to prove myself or do anything like that anymore. I think you do that with the content of your work rather than the spoken word sometimes.
No, I know that you've been like a city boy, sort of like busy life and everything's all go. And then as life went on, you realised that nature was more your home, your calling, your place to be you and feel yourself. How would you describe between those two mental states of Ian? What changed in going between those environments?
I would say what changed was knowing what I was capable of, what was possible. And I can attribute that to sort of my sort of fairly short service in the Royal Marines. It was a crash course in manhood and what you're capable of. And I took that mentality when I left into my life from there on. It was something where I felt, and I knew what I could do if I surrounded myself with the right people, if I had the right vision, the right story. That just transformed my life, that experience. And it everything I did and have done to this day has the seed of that mindset, which it took to sort of get through training and then spend a few years in the Royal Marines. So yeah, that is the underpinning of the framework that changed everything for me. So when I looked ahead after my service about what I wanted to do and what I was capable of and could I do it, I don't have the skills, but in my mind it's like I can learn the skills. I can surround myself with the right people. These things do take time and they take a lot of work, and you're moving lots of pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. But it was the kind of the mindset that I sort of carved within the sort of the journey into the Marines and through the Marines that was like, it's possible. If I just play the long game, we had that conversation earlier where I look at the long game, not the short-term goal kind of sort of orientated stuff. It's like, play the long game. And it was that sort of formative experience that led me sort of to where I am now, really.
The Marines and the military can feel like a secret society. I feel like if you're outside of it, then it's really hard to actually truly understand what it's like to be in it. How would you describe your experience in those formative years in the Marines?
Yeah, so I joined the Marines at 23, so fairly late in that kind of that spectrum. A lot of sort of, the Marines at that time was men only. So a lot of times guys joined sort of fairly early, sort of 18, 19. So I joined sort of like quite late, which was a good and a bad thing. There was guys in there that were fitter than I was, but I had 3 or 4 years of maturity, of a bit of travel and a bit more of life. So it was sort of looking back now, it was a crash course in manhood, really. It was a crash course in sort of responsibility, accountability, teamwork, not about me, it's about we, that sort of kind of thing. And then under all of that is that pushing your body and pushing your mind and pushing yourself as far as you think you can go. But within all of that, you're then having to look out for everybody in the team and in your troop and in your company or whatever it is at the time. Yeah, it's just it was this kind of like huge grounding experience of and turning me from sort of not a young spotty teenager, but a young guy, and going into becoming a man, which I think nowadays, in this kind of changing world, is there a lot of experiences for young men to go and have experiences like that where they can grow and learn and fail and move on and deal with that. Which I think nowadays, in this kind of changing world, is there a lot of experiences for young men to go and have experiences like that where they can grow and learn and fail and move on and deal with those kind of setbacks and journeys that we all go through. And the military was a fantastic crash course in that, really.
Yeah, it's a question that kind of scares me of wondering if there is such a thing that exists outside the military, where you're learning about how to take care of others and look out for other people in your life, and also realizing as well this kind of like maturity of from boy to man, and whatever that actually is. I guess you have to work it out for yourself. But how would you sort of see that in the world if you were talking to like a 23-year-old, whether it's like a boy or a girl, young lady or young man, who is out there in the world trying to kind of have some sort of crash course in life? How would they kind of go about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think travel is a fantastic teacher. Going traveling, and again having that mindset to go traveling, is a privilege, I think, because not everyone has the confidence or the ability or the money or the time, or the thought to be able to go and do these things and piece all these travels together. And I think travel and nature is a combination, because nature teaches us. It's an equalizer, and to go walking, go hiking, go camping. It's a fantastic thing because it teaches you a lot about having to be adaptable and to to sort of let things come and go, i.e. like the weather, and to plan and be responsible and be disciplined in certain areas. Yeah. But everyone might not be able to do that, because to go into the outdoors and have an adventure, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be going hiking around a woodland, I think it's about flexing these muscles, these muscles of resilience, and going into experiences where our resilience is tested in some way or another. And that doesn't have to be anything big. It can be pushing yourself to go and actually do something for the first time. We have a lot of people that come on sort of my guided walks that we do now. And we actually had one lady at the weekend, and for her to come on her own was a huge thing for her. And I really feel, that makes me really feel good inside, that someone's pushed themselves to come and do something. And now imagine if she then comes on a weekend and then comes on something that lasts 4 days, 5 days. She's just flexing those social muscles and strengthening them. So I think for people that are looking to do it for the first time, to build it, it's just to go in small increments, and always be comfortable with, I say be comfortable with the uncomfortable, but it's that point of being uncomfortable is a really good sign. That's when you feel uncomfortable doing something, that is literally this green light to be like, right, I'm going to lean into this and just try, step through this and deal with it, whatever it is that's making me feel uncomfortable. Because at that point of being uncomfortable is where the biggest growth is.
So it's a good thing to push yourself and sort of discover those boundaries.
100%. Yeah. I think I can only speak from my experience, but and there's been many a time where I've been fearful, afraid to step through that door, step across that line, to book something, to go somewhere. There's been hundreds of times. And I, even to this day, I'm still fearful of doing certain things, and organising expeditions. I'm, organising something big for maybe next year. And there's still these little just pockets of fear that pop up, that I think, oh man, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to be doing this on my own. I need to organise this on my own rather than with help from friends. But going back to the whole sort of the why I'm wanting to do it is this kind of like burning light inside of it. And it's like, I want to do this because I want to make a change and tell a story and tell a story of these people, or go on this journey. And that's what I always come back to. It's like, right, I've got to keep pushing, keep asking questions, keep meeting people, keep trying to find people that can help, and commit.
Yeah. Just having a sort of commitment to who you are, and trying to push yourself. When you reflect back on your time in the Marines, what did it reveal about who you are and who you were trying to be at the time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it revealed the mindset of you can achieve pretty much anything you want to do within reason, if you surround yourself with the right people, if you take it slow, if you look at the long game, if you plan, if you accept failure and sort of success in the same sort of sphere, and not let failure and not being good at things stop you. There was things that guys that I was with that were far better than what I was, and when I went in there, you're kind of, there's between 40 and 60 guys within a troop, and you're all pretty good at physical fitness and things like that, because you're there for that reason. So accepting that I wasn't the best, accepting that there's going to be things I'm good at, things place areas where I'll be better than others, so it's a real lesson in humility, of just accepting that you can still sort of push on and be good and stuff like that, even if you've got these little pockets of like where you're not certainly good at things. And coming out of the Marines, it was like, yeah, anything's possible. Anything's possible. It's I can't run 100 meters like Usain Bolt, or I can't sort of, play basketball like LeBron James, but I can certainly give any of those a good go if I planned and run and trained and stretched and did all of these things, but it's the it's this mindset, it's this kind of like shaping and molding of a bit of clay into something different and showing you, yeah, this is what you can create with a bit of time and a bit of practice and a bit of thought. And that's what it gives you. I wish I could give that feeling to all of the people that I meet and some of the people that doubt themselves. Is like, if you go through something, it doesn't have to be like that, but something transformative where you grow, you can sort of harness that mindset. But it takes time. It takes people around you who have the same mindset. And that's quite important, surrounding yourself with the right people. But yeah, I would never change that experience for anything. Nothing.
Wow. Cool. That seems like a very formative experience. Definitely a true transition in your life. You've said before that to face your true self is the hardest thing of all. What did you mean by that?
I think you're in some of the tests that you do within the Marines, the commando tests, you are pushed to the edge, or your perceived edge, I probably should say. And you're in those moments, you're pretty exposed in those moments, of whether you can keep going. You can always think you can keep going, but until you're actually presented with that, you're kind of like, you don't know whether you're going to step over that line or not of keeping moving forward. And I've definitely been pushed mentally and physically, in other areas of life, like we spoke about the thing that happened in the Himalayas, and that tested my character from like a mental capacity of acceptance of, wow, this is where it's at now. This is where things are going to change or go or be different. How can I adapt?
What happened in the Himalayas?
So we'd travelled across, me and some friends this was like 2015, so only 11 years ago. And we'd travelled across Tibet, and then we'd gone across the border into Nepal, and then we were simply going up to the base camp of Everest and then doing some treks in and around there. So it was a long trip. But I got ill three-quarters of the way to Everest, and huge gastro sort of virus and problems and dehydration and exhaustion from continuing to keep walking without eating. And, it was rookie move, bad move. And we'd made a pact, me and my friends, before that. If people got ill, we would sit and wait for 2 to 3 days or 2 days where the person could recover and get some food and water inside them. But we had a weather window to keep moving on, and I was the last person really to get ill. And I decided that the kind of young Marine in me decided to, we can keep pushing. Don't listen to your body. This is just sort of, a bit of illness, a bit of tiredness. You can keep going. But the mature person in me should have really said stop at that point. So we got up to where we needed to get up to, and then we did some higher walks in the area, and then I got delayed altitude sickness 2 days later, that sent me spiraling into sort of like mass sort of dehydration and exhaustion, and my sort of vestibular system was impacted because we would be walking across rope bridges, and then when I got to the opposite side of the rope bridge, my body would still be bouncing up and down, and I was like holding on to trees. So there was something, going on inside my head and inside my ears, and also inside my confidence. That was probably the one time, and I actually said this to my friend sitting by this river in the mountains, and I said, mate, this is the only time I've probably ever said this since I've been born, was like, I'm not entirely sure I can go on. And that was the first and last time I've ever said that. But at that point, it was a huge gut check and a huge sort of cut into my confidence, like a chink in the armor for me, because I'd always been able to do things and achieve things if I put my mind to it. So yeah, that experience in the Himalayas, and then me sort of the 2-year journey after that of understanding what was happening in my head and my vestibular system, And like we spoke about, I had like huge vertigo problems, and I had massive problems with the iron in my body, and it was this realization that I had to slow down. My body was telling me that slow down. You don't need to push so hard. But that experience opened me up into the slow adventure mindset of I can still do some of these big hard things, but I don't always need to push my body. I can go slower, and I can still get the rewards of adventure and expeditions with a slow mindset. And I can go slower, and I can still get the rewards of adventure and expeditions with a slow mindset. Even though it was one of the most difficult experiences I've ever been through, because I couldn't physically do something about this experience, I had to sit it out and be like, right, okay, what's holistically the best thing for me to do? What's going to nourish my body? Health, fitness, relaxation, meditation. I did Reiki. I did all of these things where I taught myself to slow down. And looking back, and like I said to you earlier, I wouldn't have changed that traumatic experience for the world. I had to, since then, I've worked on the sort of my approach and my mindset towards that experience, of balancing that experience, of looking at all of the positives and the upside to me being ill, me having a gut check, me failing, me being weaker, all of these things. I balanced all of those by working on them and writing them down and being like, right, what's the benefit of me having this experience happen to me? Well, there's many benefits if you look at them, if you ask the right questions. So it was a transformative experience where I thought to look differently about adventure and nature and expeditions. And it set me on the path to something different, a different way of seeing adventure and slowing down. And it brought me into the forests, brought me into the trees, brought me into walking slowly and being probably a bit more conscious of what I do rather than the hard push, the summit.
Sounds like healing. You're going through these practical changes.
Big time, yeah. And it's like a really good point that you've raised there, because an interview that I did where I'm doing the same thing as what you're doing, but in a slightly different way, where I interviewed one of my friends, and he said nature is always healing him. And that for me was my introduction into nature being a healing process. Not like this kind of a mega transformative like kind of thing. Is this more of like nature being a place that heals you on a daily basis or a weekly or monthly basis? And when he said that, I was like, dude, I agree with that. Like, such a fantastic way of putting it. Yeah,
I agree with it as well from my own experience, but I can't help but ask myself, what do I need healing from?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is for you?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily this like broken to healing process. It's more of as a metaphor, I think, to the modern day life of phones, technology, our senses being constantly pulled outwards, and deadlines, having to reply to things quickly, or this war for our attention that we're now in the modern world. It's more of a healing from that, this kind of like metaphorical going into nature once or twice a week, or going for a walk, or going wild camping, or going away for 4 to 5 days. It's more of a conscious detachment healing rather than I have a wound that needs to be healed. I don't think it's that. It's a metaphorical day-to-day process of healing, where you can just go and detach and be away maybe from this kind of like pressure and war for our attention, which is like we're surrounded by.
A massive part of you discovering nature has been through a lens, using a camera to sort of take you around the world. And it has clearly given you a huge insight into the way that people live and different cultures around the world, and realizing that we're on this big globe in the middle of the universe, where sometimes we can all get a little bit absorbed in our own lives, and that sort of constriction you're describing there of constantly having these deadlines and needing to look after kids or heading to the gym, and life can sometimes feel quite busy. But what have you learned through photography and taking you around the world about culture and the way that people live their lives in these remote regions that you visited?
Yeah, what I've learned, and that's another good question. Because a lot of the time when I'm photographing something that I really love and enjoy, which is usually that again, sort of that intersection of people, nature, landscape, is that there's a beautiful connection between people and the place that they're in, and that connection really revolves around their connection to the landscape, like the river or a forest or a mountain or the steppe or a mountain range. Or, I love that. I love that intersection, and I love to be on the outside looking in, and photographing that. My sort of love for photography is that voyeuristic, journalistic sort of approach, where I don't want to intrude or don't want to impact or interrupt anything that's happening, but it's capturing that real life, those organic moments of adventure. Or, I did a recent project last year on tornadoes, and traveling with meteorologists, and that was a huge eye opener, because it wasn't necessarily, well, it was adventure, but it wasn't necessarily that kind of me pushing my body. It was me observing and learning and looking at how people study and move with that kind of, in that environment. So it's all about the story and looking at the story of the people, and that's the crux of it. Is that connection. I'm looking, when I tell those stories and I photograph things, I'm looking for a new way to think and live. That's what I've come to learn. And I'm looking for lessons, and I'm looking for thoughts and impactful ways of seeing the world and seeing nature or interacting with nature. That's fundamentally what and why I do what I do, is story and looking for a new and interesting way to live.
Is there a particular tribe or people that you've met or learnt from around the world where their way of life is exactly rooted in their environment and they have that very strong connection with the place that they belong?
Yeah, that's quite a multi-layered sort of like question, because it's from the people that I've met and the experiences that I've had, their worlds are changing. The world has been impacted by technology. It's been impacted by weather, the weather changing climate, the demand on the landscape from commercial fishing or deforestation, or in some cases like drugs and alcohol and things like that impacting. There's a few years ago, I walked through a fairly small part of Africa with three Maasai men. And on that trip, it was a really interesting journey, which was only 8 days, where I was photographing these Maasai men who were leading this journey through certain communities with me there. But I was there to learn about the passage and the journey of what it means to be a man for a Maasai man. And even that is changing, because land rights are changing and all sorts of stuff, and they're adapting in a modern world. So it's quite a difficult question to answer, because you can have this very romantic view of what those lives are like, being over here and reading books and looking at stuff online. But when you get there, things are changing and lives are changing and lives are being impacted by so much. And there's so much adaptation for them to be changing in a modern world. And their sort of traditions and culture and heritage is changing slowly with it.
What do you think are like some of the biggest misconceptions we've got in like modern Western society when we think about these people like in the wild, quote unquote? who are out there.
Yeah, I think it's this. They live this existence without phones and without technology and without influences of the modern world. When from what I've seen, like I spent time in Greenland with Inuit hunters, and they're on the sledges with phones trying to find signal. And it's stuff like this, which is, Greenland's a hot topic at the moment, but it's stuff like that. Yeah, and I think you've really got to be open to the modern world is impacting people all over the world, from these like remote places, and not to have this too romantic view of how things are. Just have this really open-hearted, interested view of where things are right now and what things are being done to sustain communities and culture and music and language and all of these things, because there's so many amazing things that's been done to sustain those aspects, which are ultimately the keys to a culture: language, music, clothing. Yeah, so it's incredible to go and do some of these things. And you've just got to be open-hearted and open-minded, really.
So when I went traveling for a year, I was backpacking through Asia, absolutely loved it, and became like quite immersed in the culture there, and going through different countries and really trying to stay in homestays and living with families and things like this. And when I came back to England, I felt culture shock in my own country, which was a really back foot sort of feeling. It was quite a wobbly moment of wondering, where am I? And really realizing how people live here in this country. What are some of the things you've noticed getting back from these expeditions that you've learned about English culture and your own home?
Yeah, again, that's a multi-layered sort of thing in my thinking. I think when you go away, like for what you did, like a year, which is a huge, that's a huge moment in time throughout your life and a time span. Some of the things, I've been away, the longest I've been away is three months in Alaska. And then when I came back from that, it was the kind of what took me by surprise when I got back was, understandably, the urban sort of the urban world, but was the pace and the loudness of everything. And not to say I don't like that, because I do, but when you come back from somewhere that's quiet and so much land and so much nature and so much intricate aspects of culture, you come back here, it can so much intricate aspects of culture. You come back here, it can be quite the overwhelm of pace. I remember, actually, it's quite funny. I went from Heathrow to a Tesco, a big Tesco's just not far from here. And I remember going there at 1:00. I'd literally come back from the airport from Alaska, 3 months canoeing through Alaska. And I got to Tesco's and I was caught in the queue to get out of the Tesco's, and everyone's bibbing and the noise and swearing, and, because the lights weren't working, if I remember rightly. And I was just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing back here in all of this? But then after that, you get caught up in it within a week or two, and then you're back in the rhythm, and then you're feeling stressed and da-da-da. So, I love England, and I love the culture. I love the landscape, the hills, the towns and the cities and stuff like that. It's truly at the heart of who I am. I feel English and I love England. So coming back, sometimes I do enjoy coming back, because my family live on the Norfolk coast, which has beautiful, huge beaches and lovely woodlands, and going up there as a reset. But nothing beats these kind of big, open, wild places.
It's a special experience you've got. I think it's so unique, because when you're going to do these trips, it's not like a holiday or even backpacking in a hostel. You're kind of going way out there where no one's been, and it's this massive sense of discovery, and being out of your environment and what you see as familiar. How do you think that's kind of shaped you as a person, being in these environments where there's nothing around you to tell you who you are?
It's amazing how much grounding it gives you being in these places. I remember, it's like, just as you were saying that, I had a thought that was when I was canoeing through Alaska. I was in the canoe for 68 days, I think it was, paddling, and we stopped at certain places. And on that journey, I had memories of my childhood that I haven't remembered or thought of in 30 years. So that to me is what that disconnection from the overstimulation and the attention war, which I love that term, does. It allows lots of stuff to come in, and it allows you just to relax. And being on these trips, or when you're in those big open spaces, it just allows for you to just disconnect for a moment in time, and just to sort of be in that moment, and have just the only thing to think about is waking up, maybe cooking some food, getting back out on the trail, or getting back out on the river, or working your way up a mountain or something. Your life gets boiled down into these like simple, beautiful sort of moments. And when that happens, it allows more stuff to come in, like more appreciation of flora, fauna, mountains, weather, how that all impacts you in that very moment in time. Because I'm experiencing in those moments, I'm experiencing the river in a very special way at that moment in time. I'm experiencing the same weather as the mountains, and the same weather as what the wildlife is experiencing. That cannot do but change you as a person. So when you come back, you're always going into these little quiet places and looking for a little piece of that near where you live, and you can find it, because adventure for me is a mindset. Adventure is a venture to a mother with 2 children could be camping in the garden with marshmallows and a little camping stove. Doesn't have to be something big or grand or something like that. So it being in those places doesn't have to be big. It's the metaphor for change. It's that taking yourself out of an environment and putting yourself in an environment where you can think.
Would you describe yourself as a spiritual person?
Maybe not religiously. I'm a deep thinker, obviously. A deep thinker. You found that out. I ponder and I think, and I suppose nature could be conceived as a level of spirituality. And nature's a very big word. We conceive nature as like the natural world, but there's so many like micro components that have like forests, rivers, mountains, animals, plants, flowers. Like that's all nature. There's so many titles to the smaller parts of nature, and I think it all is. It could be a spiritual outlook on life, really, nature. And yeah, I do see it in a way. In a way, like if you see like religion as or religious sort of beliefs as a way of living, be it whatever you believe in, that's all okay. For me, nature is that kind of like God. I've heard someone say God was the grand organized design, like physics and nature. And I kind of when I heard that, I was like, well, yeah, that resonates with me. Nature as being that I look at it in that way. The mechanics of nature, incredible. You look at how forests and mountains have evolved, and rivers are formed, and where rivers come from, tiny streams lead into huge things. Like you can't be in anything but awe for that kind of outlook. And yeah, so I'd say for me, spirituality is that.
So for those people listening, let's say there's someone who works a normal existence in this country. So at 9 to 5, maybe they go to the gym like 3 days a week. They spend most of their time looking at a screen. Evenings would be like maybe watching TV or something like that. What maybe I would think is like a typical life that's lived here in England. What differs from your outlook on spirituality and the world to that person that hasn't experienced your particular outdoor adventures and learnings throughout your life?
I think it has to be just the experiences that I've chosen to put myself in, and the life I've chosen to lead. And you, when you learn through all of those experiences, and I haven't come, like we had a chat before we started this podcast about role models and our families and things like that. And I didn't come from a particularly outdoorsy family of hiking and camping. Like, I didn't have that. So the experiences have shaped who I am by choosing to go into them. Someone else, that person, that man or woman that's leading that other life, they've just leading a completely different life with a completely different mindset, having completely different experiences, and be influencing completely different ways. So we are neither different. We're not different. We're cut from the same cloth, but we've just had different experiences, and our experiences have shaped my thinking and shaped my desire to keep doing it because I know it's good for me. And that's, yeah. But to your point, like, I am that person you described sometimes during the week. I am that person in the city sitting around on the computer doing that. I am that person. I've just been very fortunate to have lived a couple of just different experiences.
Yeah, and same, I'm doing a podcast, and like this is like the cherry on the top. Like I get to talk to people and talk about the outdoors, which is great. But so much of my time is editing and working out all the business end, and that is all on a laptop. And I can't help but feel like in a resistance to that side of things. Like whenever I'm kind of sat indoors on a screen for maybe more than 5 hours, I like need to go outside. I've got to have this kind of like loosening of energy and kind of need to be moving. Do you feel that within yourself, or how would you kind of describe those two different selves, doing like desk guy and then middle of nowhere photography guy?
Yeah, I think I've got to, first of all, I try to remember I am one of both of those. I am definitely two of both of those things. And is to not try to sort of not distance myself from one. It's just to allow the fact that, I own a business as well, like you're doing this podcast. I own an outdoor business as well. So there has to be some of that. Like you're doing this podcast, I own an outdoor business as well. So there has to be some of that sort of tech and business work and being at desks and doing all. So I'm just allowing myself to accept that I am both of that, and I'll commit a certain amount of time to doing sort of that desk work and computer work. But every day I've got to move my body. I go to the gym 5 times a week, and I don't do crazy workouts. But I think I've got to get outside. I've got to move my body. I've got to be in the fresh air once a day, twice a day. And it's to not try to think I can't do this. I can't be in this tech world because I'm sucked into it as well, But what I think you can be is more conscious of the decisions that you make, the time that you spend doing certain things, i.e. this year was my kind of year for like the unplug. That's kind of like the term I sort of like coined for myself would be, okay, I'm not going to spend so much time on social media. I'm not going to spend so much time doom scrolling and doing all that kind of stuff, which I have done. I'm going to be more conscious with that time and limit that time. So I'm allowing myself to be both sides and not sort of trying to be something that I'm not, and just letting it be, but in a much more conscious way.
It's a nice sense of flow, just kind of letting things be as they are, and not letting that resistance sort of get you down at all.
Yeah, but I do struggle with the social media side of it, the anxiousness, the stress, because a lot of work, and especially me being creative, is done through that. And I have found myself in the last year being like, like felt like I'm getting pushed to be rushed. I'm getting pushed to be rushed, but I'm doing that to myself. I'm creating that, so I can uncreate it effectively. But yeah, I'm just trying to be more conscious of my time on using that.
What is it about social media in that online world that you think makes you anxious and stressed? What's actually going on there?
I think as a business owner and a lot of your clients effectively, or the people you're trying to reach and impact their lives in a positive way, are using social media. So therefore you're having to interact with it. And then within that, like the layer down is managing what you put online, how you put it online, and then then you go a layer deeper from there, and it's about these videos have to be this long, this short, has to have a hook, has to have this, which for me is like it's a bit much and all that kind of thing. But it's something I have thought about, and that can be quite destructive because you can get lost down the rabbit hole with all of that kind of thing. So you have to kind of like be conscious and pull myself back out of it and be like, it's not, I was even thinking this yesterday, do you know what? It's about the quality of the content. Your tribe will find you. The people will find you that resonate with that message. You don't have to resonate and create this all-encompassing video that you want to reach everybody all over the world who loves nature. It'd be like, no, the tribe will find you. The people that you resonate will find you. And that's the shift for me this year, is that letting that flow, that you'll resonate with certain people and they will find your message in terms of the love for the nature message.
Yeah, and part of the way you're doing that is walk wild, getting people out of London into the outdoors. Why get them outdoors near London? Feels like maybe one of the worst spots to be in the UK.
Yeah. Well, I think London is an amazing city, but I think there's so much rhythm and rush and pace and everything like that. As with most cities, it's not just London. But I live on the outskirts of London, and there's so many beautiful places within 1 hour to 2 hours of London. You've got beautiful rolling chalk hills. You've got the Cotswolds. You've got Norfolk. You've got the South Downs, where you're originally from. You've got the coastlines. There is so many beautiful places in and around London within reach of a train. And with Walk Wild, my goal is to really help people in the most frictionless way get to these wild places, learn about these wild places, move through them, and then go to the pub. No, because pubs do.
Sign me up.
Yeah. No, but yeah, that's kind of the ethos of it. Really, is to show these people and the complexity and the beauty of these places, and move through them for 5, 10, 15 miles, whatever it is.
I know a big part of it is what sounds like maybe in recent years this new layer of natural navigation. What can we learn from natural navigation and understanding where we are?
I think when you understand where you are, it connects you to that immediate place. And when you have that connection and you learn about how that area may have formed, or the trees, the ancient trees are in that area, or how the weather has impacted that area, and some of the beautiful natural clues and signs of that area, that grounds you and connects you to that point. And then when you're connected to that immediate environment, you learn about it and you care about it. And then when you care about it, you have that kind of duty and this kind of like inner sort of inner duty of like, well, we need to protect forests. We need to protect these local landscapes. We need to conserve these wildlife species or these flora and things like that, And I think you get to that stage when you learn about it. And there's a wonder in it as well, when you teach people about some of these beautiful facts about trees or the way trees grow, and you see these kind of pennies dropping for people sometimes when they're looking up, and they're just like, wow, that is incredible. Like that person now will take that knowledge and teach that to their children or teach that to their friends. And I think it's just it's helping people reach that sort of little nugget of wonder, which I've been brought to by learning stuff from other people and reading books and watching films, and people have inspired me to learn even further. And that to me is like the really beautiful thing about it all is helping people fall in love with nature, the outdoors, rather than it just being, oh, let's just go for a walk. To be like, wow, there is that, and there's this, and there, it's the connection again. It's that person, connection, landscape. It runs through everything that I do and I love and I talk about. And I want to bring that to people.
Yeah, and it's a clear purpose that you've got within you. Ian, I've got to say, over this whole conversation, what I've loved so much is it's never about the feat, it's never about the accomplishment or the record or whatever it is. It's all about what's behind it. It's about the meaning, the subtext, the story, and the context of these places that you're going to visit. So thank you for sharing your wonderful introspection on the world. And it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Cheers, Ian.
Thank you.